And we will present to you for the sermonette this morning, a deacon from the Phoenix Church, Mr. Larry Rezentes.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Happy first day of God's feast, everybody.
Thank you.
Wonderful opportunity for us to be together as God's people, and perhaps more importantly, we have the opportunity this day to meet with our great Creator God, the Father, and Jesus Christ on our annual date with them. And my goal today is to encourage you, brethren, and to reference how great we have an opportunity today to worship today together as God's people. And the words, in fact, brethren, in the English language don't really, or any language, don't comprehend what we as God's people have in store for us. Eyes have not seen or ears heard, according to Scripture, what awaits us. And the greatness of the great God that we worship, I think even we as God's people can't fully comprehend the greatness that we see before us. I was inspired yesterday as I was looking out over the Baltic from my room. I saw a phalanx of, I don't know what birds they were, but they were heading south in accordance with the guidance that God had given to them in the original creation, how they were to accomplish the way of life that they have in terms of leading and transferring their existence during different periods of time. Now, several years ago, I was in Galveston, Texas, in the United States, and there was a presentation given there by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, given by a group within that organization of the United States government. It's called the Goddard Center, and it spoke of the size of the creation. They didn't speak of it, of course, as a creation, but they spoke of it in terms of just the size and the depth of what we see through the Hubble telescope. And at that time, the estimate was for hundreds of billions of galaxies, not planets, not suns, but galaxies. With each of these galaxies comprised of hundreds of billions of suns and planets. Most recently, within the last 60 days, in fact 90 days, there was a pronouncement by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration of the United States that the size of the galaxy now is estimated at a trillion galaxies. Now, that will lead us to take a look at our first scripture, and I'll ask you to turn, please, to Isaiah chapter 9 and in verse 7. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 7 references God speaking to us through His Word. Of the increase of His government and peace there shall be no end. No end, brethren. Upon the throne of David and upon thy kingdom to order it into establishment with judgment and justice from henceforth forever, brethren, forever. So what God has in mind is an ever-increasing span of His government, an ever-increasing size of the population of His universe that will grow forever and without end. So this is what we know that God is telling us in terms of both our destiny and also in terms of what God's plan is for this universe. Now, I'm going to ask you to return for our second scripture to Isaiah, another scripture in Isaiah that perhaps we don't turn to that frequently, but it's Isaiah chapter 45. Isaiah chapter 45, and we'll look at verse 18. Isaiah 45, verse verse 18, which reads as follows. For thus saith the Lord, that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it, he hath established it in vain. He established it, I apologize. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. So this is a thus saith the Lord scripture, brethren. Now obviously, God knows that this earth is inhabited. But what he's saying here is he intended, he created this vast universe to be inhabited, brethren. So, again, I hearken back to my words of a few minutes ago that we perhaps don't completely comprehend exactly the greatness that God has intended for we as firstfruits, as God's people. I won't ask you to turn to this scripture, but in Psalms chapter 8, verses 3 to 6, when I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower, and that's really more appropriately translated for a little period of time than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and with honor. Thou hast made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things, brethren, all things under his feet. But yet we don't see all that now, do we? But that's what's coming to us. We know from Romans 8, verse 16, that we are the children of God. We are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And I'll read the scripture to you. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit, our collective spirit, brethren, that we, myself, yourself, we are the children of God. Not tomorrow, not when we're rising in the air to meet Christ. We are God's children now, today, begotten, soon to be born into the very family of the living God. And remember, we looked at this scripture a short while ago in Isaiah 9, verse 7, that of the increase of this government there should be no end. For those of you here who've read Mr. Armstrong's book, and I encourage those of you who haven't to read it, The Incredible Human Potential, Mr. Armstrong believed clearly from Scripture, and this is in the church's booklet as well, What is Your Destiny? The church has spoken in a worldwide era for those who were in worldwide, as I and many of you were, as well as in today in United, speaks to that destiny of an expanding population, that God intends to create life and to continue to grow his family forever, to penetrate, to have this vast universe of 1 trillion galaxies populated with his perfect way of life, his perfect law being promulgated throughout this vast universe. And we have the incredible privilege of being the very first fruits, now begotten but soon to be born into that family. And I think it's so important that we, as God's people, keep that in perspective. Keep that perspective, because many in God's church today are suffering, and I know this is going to be the message of Mr. Kubik, our president, the United States president, that there's suffering. But in Romans, going on beyond verse 16, there's a reference in that scripture, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy, brethren, not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation, the whole creation out there, brethren, the whole creation, the infinite universe, waits for us the manifestation of the sons of God, the sons of the living God, the great God, the almighty, all-powerful God, whose greatness we can hardly comprehend with our current finite minds. It awaits us, brethren. It awaits us. And we cited the scripture, although I didn't read the verse to you, but at 1 Corinthians 2:9, again, But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. So this is our destiny, brethren. This is our collective destiny. We, so privileged as God's people, first fruits, very first fruits. We're going to have the opportunity, the destiny, to inherit all of this as members of the very family of the living God. Throughout an expanding universe, with the opportunity to teach in the initial coming millennium that we're celebrating now in the Feast of Tabernacles, and then in the last great day, many of us, none of my family are in the church, have the opportunity of teaching family members who never had the privilege of learning what we learned. Perhaps someday being the first people that those who, my parents were never in the church, to see them rise up in the air, we being the first to see them as physical human beings, to teach them, to say that this is a new world that has been restored through the power of the living God. But yet, God does say in Psalms 24, verse 1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So it's all the Lord's, it's all the eternal God's. But yet, despite the fact that all this creation is His, He's bestowing that on us, brethren. He's bestowing that on us as His family. Very members of the family, to bring to fruition what God has in mind for this vast universe.